Of course, I had to look that term up to see what that meant. But an imprecation means to invoke evil upon. Okay? Now, this also has the connotation of meaning an oath, a sworn covenant, and of course the invoking evil upon is from the negative context, a curse. So this term Allah can be used in one of two ways. Invoking an oath or a curse, depending on the context of the speaker. Now, it's derived from number 422, which is basically the same term, which means to adjure. Now, the word adjure, it means to command or enjoin solemnly as under an oath. And then it has, again, in the bad sense, to imprecate or imprecation. So the term is twofold. You can use it in a positive sense as an oath or a negative sense as a curse. Now, looking at our passage, Leviticus 5:1. Let's read that again. And if a soul sin and hear the voice of swearing. So somebody, which is a soul, a being, an individual, if somebody hears somebody either invoking an oath or invoking a curse, it says, and is a witness, whether he hath seen or known of it, if he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. Now, what does that mean, is the question. Well, in this case, this is what it's talking about, all right? A proclamation has been issued. And this is what we're talking about as far as the oath or the curse. Somebody hears this, can bear witness to this, okay? But they refuse to. That's why it says again, and is a witness, whether he have seen or known of it, if he do not utter it. Now, why I think this is interesting, especially even the timing and how the Creator has even moved to get to this particular section now. Currently, here in these United States of America, we have what's going on called an impeachment inquiry. Now, what's interesting about it in context of this, there are several names that have been mentioned in other people's testimony, right? You have a personal lawyer's name who's been mentioned. You have the, what's this position? Secretary of State, whose name has been mentioned. You have, I believe, Chief of Staff, whose name has been mentioned. But these three individuals who hold this particular office have knowledge of something, but they're being blocked from testifying, if I understand that correctly. And I thought that was interesting because based on what this passage is teaching us, if you have information that will shed light on whatever's going on in the courts, and you don't give that information, in the eyes of the Creator, you're guilty. You have committed a sin in the eyes of the Creator. Now, when you look at that, the thought that the Most High gave to me, just in context of that, we're going to get into a couple other things too, but the thought that He gave to me, when people say, well, you're not under the law. See, they don't understand when it comes to the Torah or the Chumash and the foundation of everything that Moshe gave to us, in their mind, they just think about, the sacrifices. They think about some other aspects of the Torah which may be uncomfortable for them, or things that they just simply don't want to do. You look at such as a dietary law and things along that nature, But these are laws that will directly affect justice. Think about that. So when a person says, you're not under the law, you don't have to do those things anymore. You just said, okay, if somebody has information and they're not giving that information up, it's considered to be a sin. You don't have to do that anymore. Now, if you have that information, it's fine. Just hold on to it. That's a sin. And that's unjust in the eyes of the Creator. And another thing, when you consider that particular passage and this commandment that we're looking at, it is also a direct link to the whole concept of stop snitching, or snitches get stitches, and this whole idea. In the eyes of the Creator of the heavens and the earth, if you know something, and he's talking about swearing right now. If you know this, if you have this information and you refuse to give it up, in other words, think about it this way. You know what the Most High is saying? Snitch. That's what the Creator is saying. Tell what you know, because that is being just. But we live in a world, I remember when we were younger. You know, don't be a tattletale. You know, you're told things like that. So you with somebody, maybe both of y'all doing something wrong. Maybe you see somebody doing something wrong, and the first thing that you're being taught, don't be a tattletale. In other words, don't go back and tell on your friend or your sibling or whosoever. Not realizing that you're actually teaching and you're instilling in an individual not to be obedient to the Torah. Think about that. And these are some thoughts that the Most High put on my mind as we were going through this particular commandment, you know. But let's move on. Let's see some other things. But anyway, with the voice of swearing, let me just read this little excerpt here. A proclamation was issued calling anyone who could get information to come before the court and bear testimony to the guilt of a criminal. And the manner in which witnesses were interrogated in the Israeli courts of justice was not by swearing them directly, but adjuring them by reading the words of an oath, the voice of swearing. The offense, then, for the expiation of which this law provides was that of a person who neglected or avoided the opportunity of lodging the information which it was in his power to communicate. In the eyes of the Most High, this is considered a trespass. Okay, which we're going to get into that as we go on. So that's Leviticus chapter 5 and verse 1. Let's go to the second verse. It says, or if a soul touch any unclean thing, whether it be a carcass of an unclean beast, or a carcass of an unclean cattle, or the carcass of unclean creeping things. Now what that's referred to is sherets, okay, which we'll get to that as we go through Vayikra or Leviticus. We're going to come to the section that tells us exactly what is clean, what is unclean. Okay, we're going to get to that. Most High willing. Continuing, and if it be hidden from him, and that's the thing. You come into contact with something that in fact is unclean, but you're unaware of the uncleanness of this thing, whatever it is. Okay? It says, he also shall be unclean and guilty. That word guilty, the term asham, which we're going to get into shortly. Okay? Think about that. Now, again, some people probably have some difficulty accepting certain things. One thing that I want to incorporate at this particular juncture in the lesson, when the Most High brought me into this way of life, early on, being taught how to pray, one of the things that we should pray for throughout the course of the day, and there's a particular time frame that you can pray. You know, you have your ma'ariv, which are your evening prayers. You have your shacharit, which are your morning prayers. And then you have your mincha, which are your afternoon prayers, you know. But that doesn't mean that you can only pray during these particular times, no. And ma'ariv is sunset, shacharit is sunrise, and mincha is at the high point of the day, what we refer to as noon, okay. And those are some suggested times which we can come before the Most High, and there is a reason behind that. I think we may have discussed it in a previous lesson, but nevertheless, point being is this. when you give these prayers for yourself, for your family, your friends, etc., you should always pray to be forgiven for the sins that you commit knowingly and unknowingly. Okay? I just wanted to interject that thought here because this is what he's talking about. Sometimes we're going to come across something that is unclean. We don't know that it's unclean. Regardless of whether we know that or not, we're guilty. Now, if it comes to our mind or we're brought to the awareness that something is unclean, he's going to tell you what to do from there on. Okay? Let's move on. Verse 3. It says, or if he touch the uncleanness of man, whatsoever uncleanness it be that a man shall be defiled with. Now, this is going to be one or the other. You have what's called zav. Okay, and we'll get into that when we get into a little further into Leviticus. Or you have what's called nidah. All right, these are the states of uncleanness of a man or a woman. When it says man, it's talking about male or female. Okay, remember, and he created man, Adam, and called them male. Both male and female. Okay, humankind or humanity. Okay, so let me start off. Or if he touch the uncleanness of man, whatsoever uncleanness it be that a man shall be defiled with, and it be hid from him, when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty. Okay? And again, when it comes to these uncleanness, there are certain animals that the Creator has deemed unclean. There are certain states or conditions that a person would be in that the Creator has deemed unclean. When you come into contact with this and think about it, most of us who are striving to be obedient to the Torah, most of us work in places where we are surrounded by people who are not obedient to the Torah. We don't know what condition this person is in, and I'm not even suggesting that we go around asking what state a person is in. You may shake somebody's hand, and as a man, I can shake another man's hand and he be unclean. Because some people have this mindset, well, I'm not going to shake another woman's hand because she may be neither. But guess what? A man can be just as unclean as a woman, so it doesn't make a difference. It can be either or. And people with that mindset, they think they're alleviating, being condemned or not condemned, I shouldn't use that word, being made unclean from, as a man refusing to shake a hand of a woman because she may be nidah. Well, not realizing just because he's a man doesn't mean that he's not zav or nidah too. We don't know if this man slept with a woman who was on her nidah, and he would actually be unclean at that point. But I'm not going to get into all of that. We get there when we get there. But the point is, whether you know it or not, even if it's hid from you, you're considered to be unclean. When you're made aware of it, you're considered to be guilty. Asham. Okay? Now, let's move on. Verse 4. Or if a soul swear. Now this is a whole different term right here, which we'll get to the meaning of that word as well. Or if a soul swear, pronouncing with his lips to do evil or to do good. Now think about that. And this is where once we get to the definition, you're really going to see what this is talking about. But just think about it. It doesn't make a difference whether it's for evil or for good. And we're going to look at a passage that Mashiach addressed that on. Okay? And then we're going to understand why he said what he said. He says, again, Leviticus 5:4. Or if a soul swear, pronouncing with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatsoever it be that a man shall pronounce with an oath, and it be hid from him, when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty in one of these. Right? So now, the term translated as swear in this particular passage, let's put this up on the board for you as well. This word is, put a line here to make the distinction. This word is Shabbat, and it comes from number 7650. Okay? Now, defined initially to be complete. Okay? It says, but is used as a denominative from 7651. Has to seven oneself, because this term is also connected to the number 7. That is swear, as if by repeating a declaration 7 times. Okay? So the word, again, to swear, let me put this up here too. To swear, to take an oath, or to swear an oath. Okay, so, but what's interesting about it is that it says this can refer to something to do evil or to do good. So what this is referring to is this. Think about a person who makes a rash promise, somebody who's impulsive, right? Let's look at this passage in Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to start at verse 33. And the Messiah, he's referring to this particular command. Listen to what he says. He says, again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto Yahweh thine oaths. That's why we have to be very careful, even when it comes to making a vow. We have to be very careful when it comes to doing these things, because the Creator is going to hold you to it. And what's interesting about it, let me read this passage again. I'm going back up to Leviticus 5:4 for a moment, just so you can hear this one more time. Or, if a soul swear, pronouncing with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatsoever it be that a man shall pronounce with an oath, and it be hid from him, when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty in one of these. Now again, he's talking about being guilty. You said you was going to do something, and the fact is that, and it be hid from him, it's like maybe you forgot that you said, even though it was a rash decision, I'm going to do this evil thing, or I'm going to do this good thing. Listen to that. If you swear and make, I swear. That's why when we were younger, now some of you may remember, some of you may not remember. But one of the things that I do recall being taught, this is from your parents or grandparents, not to swear. Not when they said that, it wasn't in the context of using profanity. That's not what they meant. I swear to God. They taught you you're not supposed to do that. Think about that. I mean, I remember being taught not to say things like that. I swear to God. But people do that. Now, they do these things, again, rashly. They may be filled with emotion, be it for evil or for good, but in the eyes of the Creator, and this is where we got it. These commands that Yahweh given us, He wants us to be mindful. Think about that. Things that we do, we may say, oh, that's not that important. But in the eyes of the Creator, it is important. Like there's a saying from years ago, word is bond, word is bond. Being a man of your word or a woman of your word. That's what we're talking about right now. It's so surprising that the Torah even goes as far as to say whether it be for evil or for good. If you swear something, you're bound to do that thing. That's the point. But listen to what the Messiah said in regard to this. Again, Matthew 5:33. Again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto Yahweh thine oaths. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by the heavens, for it is Elohim's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst not make one hair white or black. But let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. Listen to that. Let your yes be yes, let your no be no. In other words, say what you mean and mean what you say. That's what he's saying. Who would have thought the Most High is concerned with something like that? But he is. He wants us to be mindful. Think about how many of us have done things impulsively and I wish I wouldn't have made that decision. You see? You just reacted. He wants us to take a moment. Think about it. Before you say something you're going to regret. Before you do something that you're going to regret. The Creator is concerned about that. Let's move on. He says, let's go back to Leviticus chapter 5. It says in verse 5, and it shall be, when he shall be guilty in one of these things, that he shall confess that he had sinned in that thing. Now, we are learning in the Torah, once these particular infractions have been brought to your attention, confession needs to be made. Admit you're wrong. Admit your guilt. This is the Torah telling us this. Verse 6. And he shall bring his ashma, which is trespass offering. Okay? Ashma. And he shall bring his trespass offering unto Yahweh for his sin, chata, which he hath sinned. A female from the flock, a lamb or a kid of the goats, for a chata'at, which is a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his sin. Okay? So now, our word here, let me get this out of the way for you. This is our next offering, trespass offering. Okay? Now, what I found to be interesting about this particular offering is the term that it's derived from. Now, this word here is ashma. Okay? And this is number 819. Of course, it's the Hebrew. Alright? And this is defined as guiltiness. Okay? In other words, it's an admission of guilt when you offer this particular sacrifice. Okay? But it is derived from another term, number 817. I'm going to put this up on the board. Number 817, and of course, basically the same term, guilt. Now, of course, ashma refers to the trespass offering. Right? And again, acknowledgement of being guilty or guiltiness, the state of guilt, and that's that suffix added to the term guilt, state of being guilty, if you will. But it comes from the term asham, which also means guilt. It says, by implication, a fault, also a sin offering. Okay? Now I'm going to read this. It can connote the deeds which bring about guilt. It can also express the condition of being guilty, That is, the results of the actions. Okay. Now, derived from another term. All of these words are basically similar. The term asham, you find it again in number 816. To be guilty, to be punished, to perish, etc. Now the word in 816, this word is most often used to describe the product of sin, that is, guilt before the Most High. The product of sin, which is guilt before the Most High. And that's why I thought this term was interesting, because now this is the Hebrew word, asham. Let me put this down here too. 816 for your record. And it's still the same term, asham. But what's interesting about it, we have an English term derived from this word, and I'm sure you've seen it. But in the English, we don't pronounce it asham. We put an E on the end, and we refer to it as ashamed or ashamed. You see? When we feel ashamed about something, that means we feel guilty. Think about that. So there's an offering that the Most High has given to us when we have that feeling of guilt. You bring this, the trespass offering. I mean, some of the things that Yahweh has laid out for us, when we go through the Torah and we learn what His Word is teaching us, sometimes it amazes me that you have ministers who go to school, and my assumption is if you are a minister and you go to school to get your degree in being whatever type of minister that you are, you have to learn about these things. If you went to school and did not learn about these things, I believe you have a failed education. But they help us to better understand how the Most High views His people and all that He has established for our benefit. So the idea then, if you're feeling guilt because of a sin, then He gives those three particular sins. If you're feeling guilt because of a sin that you committed, go through these steps with the intent to relieve some of that guilt. Because sometimes when a person feels guilty or ashamed even, one of the things that we can do to alleviate feeling that way is just come clean. You know, the most difficult thing to do is to carry around that feeling of shame and just hold on to it and bottle it up, because eventually that emotion is going to turn into something else. And then one of the things, too, that you learn when it comes to any type of emotion, when you hold on to emotions, we have a limit. There's not an unlimited amount of emotion we can bottle up. Because if we do that, something's going to happen. Now look at it this way. During a group years ago, talking about emotions, one of the analogies that was given, take a soda bottle, right? Now, when you shake up that soda bottle, the acid in that soda is building up, right? Just imagine shaking up that soda bottle. The more you shake it, the more that acid is going to build up. So every time something happens to us, it can be shame, it can be sadness, it can be anger, it can be fear, it can be any emotion. But if we continue to allow that emotion to build up, what's happening, it's like that soda bottle. We become that soda bottle that's being shaken up, and it keeps building and building. At some point, it's going to explode. But here's the question. When it explodes,